Hey guys, so I wanted to do a log entry of my first 2 days out on the Northville-Placid Trail. Overall, it's been quite an adventure. Much more of an adventure than I was actually anticipating. I was anticipating this well-used, well-marked trail, and what I got was a well-used, well-marked deer path at spots. No, really, it's very well marked as a trail. It's just the trail itself is a little ambiguous at points. There's tons of blowovers and a lot of overgrowth. And because of all the rain, half the trail's a swamp. So it kind of feels like you're trudging through the bog. What I've liked, though, is it's been kind of a make-your-own-adventure trail, which for me, I enjoy it. It's definitely been slow going, though, as the days go on. But, so, day one, I started out in Northville at 8:30 in the morning, and I completed the road walk section to the trailhead. And the road walk section was not terrible. I actually overshot by like half to 3/4 of a mile my turn, which turns you off the main road and then heads towards the trailhead. So I actually had to backtrack and then head up to the trailhead, which made it a lot. And with a really heavy pack, with a 40-pound pack, the road walk was beautiful but very tough for me personally. I was happy to see the trailhead, and honestly, the beginning of the trail is fantastic. Northville, the trailhead, all the way to Stony Creek was just easy, wonderful, well-marked, winding trail through the woods, tons of salamanders. The trail wasn't too wet. I was thinking to myself, wow, this is actually a lot better than I was anticipating, because I was expecting tons of water and floods and yada, yada, yada. And I didn't get any of that in the that first section of the trail. I got to Stony Creek, and so I read about water crossings, and I crossed, there's a few brooks and streams and whatever, and I was like, oh, these aren't bad at all. I mean, they were a little swollen, but nothing crazy. And then I got to Stony Creek, and I looked out, and it was raging. Stony Creek was up at least 1.5 feet, and that's probably a conservative estimate. It was over the banks 5 feet on either side, 5 to 6 feet. You can see where the bank drops off, and the grass and the water is 5 to 6 feet beyond that on the sides. So I was like, whoa. I don't know if I can do this, especially alone. It's a little daunting alone. So I packed everything up, buttoned everything down, threw on my sandals, and lengthened my poles. Looked for what looked like to be a decent spot to cross, which was kind of at the trailhead, and I was like, all right, let's go see how it is. Walked in 10, 15 feet, and I was like, absolutely not. Water was already, above my knees, approaching my waist, and it was everything I could do to stay up. So I was like, all right, well, I don't know if my trip's going to continue, because I don't think I can make this crossing. So I was like, all right, well, there's got to be a better way. So with my pack left, I walked up a little bit, not too much better. I walked, and then heading back down to the trail, where the trail meets the river. I see these two people come out. It's a brother-sister pair. A little bit later in life, Lucci and Mary Jane. And so I talked to them, and we kind of try to figure it out, and Lucci puts on his stuff, decides to go across, and I'm like, all right, well, I looked at my GPS, and I was like, all right, and I looked down the creek, downstream, and I was like, all right, maybe it's good to cross down here. So Mary Jane's waiting, and Lucci's trying to find a better spot to cross. I head downstream with my pack. I thought it narrowed in a bend. I got down there, absolutely nothing. It was actually worse than where we were. And I look, and Lucci's making his way across. And I'm like, all right, well, it looks sketchy, but if he can do it, maybe we can all get across. So I start bushwhacking back up the riverbank to where we were, and she said that he had a really hard time. Took him the whole time that I had gone down the trail, or downstream to look, and he almost went in. So I watched him walk back up with his poles and cross at a higher location upstream, which looked a little shallower, but not much better in terms of, the waters being lower or less aggressive. So we talked to him, and he said it was rough, but possibly doable. And I was like, there's got to be a better way. So I actually took out the official ADK map, and I was looking at the topo lines to see where the stream was, and maybe we can find a flatter spot. And upstream there was a widening of the topo line, so I was like, all right, there's a less gradient upstream. Let's go take a look up. So we all grabbed our stuff. I grabbed my pack. He carried hers. We went upstream, and sure enough, there was a slightly less aggressive spot, and we decided to cross there. So I head out first, and the water is not quite as high as it was, but the current is definitely a lot less. So I'm making my way across really slow. Footing was tough because you big boulders and little rocks, and you couldn't see too well because the water was just moving so fast. The sunlight helped a little bit, but then I get to this one section, and there's water cascading over a boulder, creating an eddy, and I was like, oh no, this is gonna be bad. I knew the depth dropped, and I was like, uh-oh, this is gonna be tough. But then right on the other side of that, pretty much slack water to the bank. It was about a 10-foot section. And I was like, all right, well, let's go. So I start pumping into it, and it was tough. Water went up to my waist, if not even a little higher. Filled my hip belt pockets with water, and it took me everything I could to stay stood up, but I made it to the other side, dropped my pack, grabbed my poles, and I waded back in a little bit to see if I could help them across. And Lucci's got Mary Jane, and they're walking together, and she's doing pretty good. And then all of a sudden she gets her foot stuck in a rock and loses her footing, and she starts to go. So he tells her, let go and swim. So she lets go, immediately gets stuck downstream. Luckily there was a nice rock that she was able to grab onto. I go in, give Lucci my other pole. So I have one pole, and he's going to have my second because he gave her one of his poles. And he gets across, and then we move downstream, and he starts wading in, and I start wading in to go get her. Luckily, we were able to reach her. He waded down and around her to the other side, and I was on the bank side, and we were able to get her over, get her back on her feet. I used, my hands to stable her poles, so she would have a firm basis to grip on, walk up. We all made it to shore, went to the Stony Creek lean-to, dried off a little bit, had a chat. Really nice people, really lucky that I met them at the same time that I did. Otherwise, I really don't think I would have made it across. I don't think I would have had the confidence myself to do something like that. But when you have more people, it definitely helps. Everybody helps each other out, and we were all able to get across. And luckily, we made it to the other side to continue our journey. So I leave them at the lean-to. I grab my stuff, change back in my trail runners, and I want to do the section from Stony Creek to Benson before it gets dark. And I'd already done a little bit too many miles that day, and the beginning of that section, Stony Creek to Benson Road, was really blown down, really kind of tricky, and it was kind of a trudge. Took us an hour and a half to cross Stony Creek, so I was extra tired. Getting to Benson Road was definitely a relief. But then I ended up trudging a little bit more, and I went in about a mile and a half, where I was looking. It took me a long time to find a nice tent site. I ended up tenting under these big pines. Had some dinner, hung my bag, got my tent, and I'm sleeping, and I wake up in the middle of the night, and I hear a huge blowdown happen. Not right next to me, but not too far away. So I was like, oh no, am I in the right spot? I made sure I checked, so there were no widowmakers. So I decided to just wait it out. I kind of had some clear sky above my head. And I was like, all right, when I wake up in the morning, I wake up in the morning. Kind of had a lazy morning. I woke up early, but then I decided to stay in bed for a little bit. Packed up my tent. Mosquitoes were terrible, so I didn't even have a chance to have breakfast or a cup of coffee. Grabbed my bag, pulled out my food for the day, stuffed everything in my bag, rolled up my tent, strapped it to the front, and started trekking, eating a bar and breakfast while I was along the way. And then pretty soon, trail got mucky. It was completely different. The Northville to Benson Road section was, minus the few blowdowns after Stony Creek, this section has been, Benson Road to White House, has been pretty mucky and pretty slow. The trail basically turned into a drainage path for all the water that we've had. So you're trekking through swamp and muck and bushwhacking to get around as much of it as possible, but some of it's unavoidable. So wet trail runners basically were the theme of the day. It was unavoidable. And blowdown, so trying to find alternative routes around stuff, super overgrowth. So it was a tough little trek. I finally made it to Rock Lake around noon. Started around 7:30, and decided to stop. I really wanted a cup of coffee, grab some lunch. Take all, trail runners come off, marrying out my feet, and this guy comes down, and he's a guide guiding a group from NYU, and I got a chance to pick his brain, and he gave me some really valuable information that, the trail's basically just like this the rest of the way, which is good to know because I was expecting something different, but now that I know, it makes it more manageable. Also, I finally realized that I packed way too much food for 8 days. I don't eat that much on the trail, and I packed way too much sweet and not enough protein and salty. So I was able to get rid of 4 complete cookies to him and his group, which was a blessing, and actually really made my pack a lot lighter. So a rest, some sun, some coffee, and a lighter pack really boosted my morale for the second half, because the first half my shoulders were hurting, especially towards the end of the first day. My shoulders were hurting, but I made it to camp that day, and then again my shoulders were really bothering me in the first half of the day, getting to Rock Lake. And then I really wanted to make Mud Lake's lean-to, which behind me, that's what I got. I did make it. I had a much better morale. After talking to him, I found out some details about how the trail is, so I kind of expected it. And going in, I just forged ahead. I was able to stock up on some water at a nice spot before I got to the lean-to. So I had some nice cooking water. The lean-to was a very welcome sight to see. I was able to cook a nice dinner, hang my bag early. I got here at 6:30 as opposed to last night. I got to camp around 7-ish. It was already starting to get dark, and by the time I hung my bag and everything, it was dark. So this was a much more relaxed, enjoyable evening for me. Being here at this lean-to, I actually lean-to pitched my tent, which they say you shouldn't do, but the mosquitoes and the no-see-ums are horrendous. He said, luckily I missed blackfly season by like days, so it's just been mosquitoes, but they've just been relentless all day. Bug net, head net, and everything. As you can see, they're currently trying to eat me alive. That's why I'm all covered up. It's not particularly cold, but the mosquitoes are just terrible. And so I'm really looking forward to getting a really nice night's sleep. Probably, I'll wake up when I wake up tomorrow, and then I'd like to go into Paseco, and then continue possibly another 6 miles after that. Trying to do about 17 a day to, make Placid in 8 days. I'm a little flexible, but if Pacifico has a Stewart's or something, I'd really like to sit for an hour, charge my stuff, maybe get a slice of pizza or a sandwich and a cup of coffee. We'll see. We'll see what they have. All right, I just wanted to, but today, it's been nice. I got all my stuff drying. Hopefully my shoes dry out overnight, which they won't. But hopefully my socks do, and my shirt and my pants. And I think I have a kind of a wet crossing tomorrow, so it's gonna be a good day. Feeling a lot better now that I have a lighter pack and know what to expect. So it's only gonna get better and faster from here, I hope. Looking forward to the final West Canada Lake section, where it kind of goes a little desolate for a little while, but also kind of looking forward to Pacifico. So maybe I'll see a little bit of civilization. Kind of been out here on my own for the last 2 days. Totally enjoyed it. I've learned a lot about myself, my physical limits, my mental limits, my confidence has grown. I've learned a lot. I've been able to gain a lot more skills that I didn't have, that I thought I had, but I was able to actually put them to the test and figure everything out. So, good night. I'm going to go back into my mosquito-free haven and get some rest. I just wanted to fill you all in on how my trek was going so far. And I'm looking forward to the next, 6 to 7 days, depending on how many miles I can put in as the time goes on. All right? Good night.